The Forgotten Soldier. The city of Arvel was a place of shining towers and broken promises. Merchants filled the streets with loud voices, selling gold, silk, and food. Nobles walked with pride, dressed in silver and blue, their heads held high. But among them walked a man no one wanted to see. He was a veteran of old wars, a soldier who once fought for the very empire that now ignored him. His clothes were torn, his boots worn down, and his hands rough from years of battle. The scars on his face were reminders of a time when he was needed. But now, he was nothing more than a shadow in a city that had moved on. Children pointed at him, whispering that he was a beggar. Guards passed by, not caring if he lived or died. Even those he once saved in battle no longer remembered his name. To them, he was only the poor veteran. At night, he sat alone near the old fountain, watching the stars. His mind returned again and again to the battlefield. Screams of men, the clash of swords, the roar of strange machines. He had fought for the king, for the empire, for people who had promised him a home. But those promises had turned to dust. Still, there was something unbroken inside him, a small fire that refused to die. He had no gold, no family, and no glory left. But his heart still carried the discipline of a soldier, even if no one saw it anymore. One cold evening, as he tried to sleep under a broken roof, a sound woke him. It was the clatter of armored boots, slow and heavy. From the shadows appeared a figure dressed in black armor, his face hidden behind a hood. The figure did not speak at first, only looked at the veteran with sharp eyes. The figure finally said in a low voice, "The king calls for you." The veteran almost laughed. "The king? Why would he remember me?" he asked bitterly. But the armored figure did not answer, only handed him a seal, a mark that could not be forged. The symbol of the dying king. Confusion filled the veteran's mind. Why now, after so many years of silence? Why would a forgotten soldier be summoned to the palace in the middle of the night? But curiosity and something deeper, a soldier's loyalty, pushed him to follow. They moved through dark alleys and quiet streets, avoiding the eyes of the city. The palace loomed like a giant shadow, its towers black against the moon. Inside, the air was heavy with fear. The once lively halls were silent, and guards stood stiff as stone. It felt as if the palace itself was holding its breath. The veteran was led through iron doors and into a chamber lit by a single torch. There, on a grand bed covered in crimson cloth, lay the king. Once mighty, now thin and pale, his breath shallow. His crown rested beside him, forgotten. His eyes, though weak, still held power. The veteran knelt out of instinct, though he had sworn never to bow again. "My king," he said, his voice rough. The king raised a trembling hand, signaling for silence. "Soldier," the king whispered, his voice broken but commanding. "You were loyal when others betrayed me. You were brave when others fled." The veteran frowned, not understanding. "I am no one now, my king, only a beggar in your streets." The king's lips curled into a faint smile. "And yet, you are the one I must trust," he whispered, "because only a man who has lost everything can guard what truly matters." The veteran's heart pounded. He wanted to ask what this meant, but the king's hand moved toward a golden chest beside the bed. The chest was carved with strange runes that seemed to glow faintly in the torchlight. The king struggled, his breath rattling, but with effort, he pushed the chest forward. The veteran stared, unsure if he should open it. "What is this, my king?" he asked. The king's voice dropped to a whisper, almost lost. "Our last hope," he said. "Take it, protect it, even when the world turns against you." The room grew silent, the weight of the words heavy in the air. The veteran reached out, his scarred hands trembling as they touched the cold surface of the chest. For the first time in years, he felt fear, not of war, but of destiny. Something inside told him that once he opened this chest, his life would never be the same. Behind him, the torch flickered, shadows twisting across the walls like dark spirits. The armored figure stood silently, watching, as if guarding a secret that should not be spoken. The veteran swallowed hard, his throat dry. The chest creaked as he lifted the lid, and a strange glow spilled out. Inside, something moved. The veteran froze. It was small, wrapped in cloth, breathing softly. And then, two glowing eyes opened, staring straight at him. The poor veteran felt his heart stop, for in that moment, he realized this was no treasure, no gold, no jewel. It was alive, and it was waiting for him. The dying king's gift. The glow from the chest filled the chamber, soft yet strange. The poor veteran leaned closer, his breath caught in his throat. What he saw was not gold, not a weapon, not the riches he once dreamed of. It was a small creature, curled up in faded cloth. Its body shimmered with tiny scales that glowed like dying embers. Its wings were fragile, like folded paper, trembling with each breath. But it was the eyes, bright, golden, alive, that froze the veteran's soul. Those eyes looked not like an animal's, but like a thinking being. The king's voice broke the silence, weak yet sharp. "Take him," he whispered, pointing a shaking finger at the creature. The veteran's hands trembled. "A beast? My king, why would you give this to me?" The king shook his head slowly, his face pale as ash. "Not a beast," he whispered. "He is the last of a line older than kingdoms, older than stars." The veteran felt a strange heat rise in his chest as he reached forward. The creature stirred, its head lifting, its eyes locking onto his. And then, in a voice soft as wind, it spoke. "You came." The veteran stumbled back, his knees hitting the stone floor. His heart thundered. This was no dream. The creature had spoken. The king's lips curled into a faint smile. "He speaks. Yes, he chose you the moment your eyes met." Confusion burned through the veteran's mind. How can this be? Why me, a beggar, a forgotten soldier? The king coughed, his body shuddering with the effort. Because loyalty cannot be bought with gold, only earned in fire and loss. The veteran's hands shook as he lifted the tiny creature. Its scales were warm, its heart beat fast. It nestled into his arms, as if it had known him forever. A strange calm washed over him, though he did not understand why. "You must listen," the king gasped, his voice breaking. "The council, the nobles, even my guards, they fear him. They would destroy him if they could." The veteran's eyes narrowed. "Why? He is but a child, weak and helpless." The king's gaze hardened. "Because they know what he will become." A silence thick as iron filled the room. The creature shifted in the veteran's arms, tilting its small head. "I am not only what you see," it whispered in a childlike tone. "I hold memories, secrets, knowledge of worlds beyond your own." The veteran felt cold sweat on his skin. World beyond? This was madness. But the creature's glowing eyes carried a truth that no lie could mimic. He felt as if those eyes could see every scar, every failure, every hope left inside him. The king struggled to sit upright, pain twisting his face. "You must protect him," he commanded, his voice burning with final strength. "Swear it, soldier, swear that you will guard him even when the world calls him a curse." The veteran hesitated, his life flashing in fragments before his eyes. The empty nights, the forgotten honor, the silence of being unseen. And now, this creature, fragile yet powerful, staring at him with trust. Slowly, he lowered his head. "I swear," he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I will protect him until my last breath." The king closed his eyes, a look of peace crossing his worn face. "Then my kingdom is not lost, even if I am," he whispered. And with those words, the last breath of the king left him. The chamber fell silent. The armored figure in the corner shifted, his face still hidden in the hood. But now his stance seemed sharper, tense. The veteran looked up, his voice low. "What happens now?" The creature in his arms pressed closer, whispering, "Now they will hunt you." The heavy doors suddenly shook with the sound of fists and steel. Guards shouted from outside, their voices filled with anger. "Open this door. Protect the king." The veteran's heart pounded. They would see the dead king, they would see the chest opened, and they would think only one thing, that he had stolen something forbidden. The creature looked at him with calm, unblinking eyes. "They will call you traitor, thief, even murderer," it said softly, "because they fear me, because they know my power." The veteran clenched his teeth, the soldier in him waking again. "I swore an oath," he muttered, his grip tightening on the creature. The armored figure stepped forward now, finally speaking. "Then you must run, soldier, for once that door breaks, no wall in this city will shelter you." The sound of iron smashing against wood grew louder. The veteran's pulse raced, but his eyes hardened. He looked down at the strange, fragile creature, the king's final gift. He no longer saw himself as a beggar, a forgotten shadow. He was a soldier again, carrying a burden greater than any weapon. The creature whispered one final word before the door cracked. "Protector." The veteran's body tensed, ready for what would come. The door splintered, guards flooding into the chamber with swords drawn. And the forgotten soldier, now bound by oath and fate, turned to face a world that no longer wanted him, but would soon learn to fear him. The talking dragon's secret. The chamber was chaos. Guards rushed in, swords flashing, eyes wide as they saw the lifeless king. Their shouts filled the room like thunder, accusing, judging, without question. And in the center stood the poor veteran, clutching the strange creature glowing in his arms. "Seize him," a guard roared. But before they could move, the torchlight flickered wildly. A thin voice rose, not from the veteran, not from the soldiers, but from the bundle in his arms. "Do not touch him." The guards froze, their faces pale. The sound was clear, sharp, and impossible. The creature had spoken. For a moment, silence crushed the room. Then fear twisted their expressions, and they raised their blades higher. The veteran's grip tightened, his voice booming. "Stand back." He had no armor, no shield, but the old strength of war still burned in his chest. The creature looked up at him, golden eyes unblinking. "Protector," it whispered again. "Trust me." Before the veteran could speak, the tiny dragon opened its mouth. A faint spark leapt into the air, no larger than a candle flame. But the moment it touched the floor, the stone hissed and cracked, glowing red. The guards stumbled back in terror. "Witchcraft! Demonic beast!" they cried. The armored figure, still watching from the shadows, stepped forward, his voice low, calm, yet cutting through the panic. "Soldier, the king's last command is yours to carry." He paused, his hidden eyes fixed on the dragon. "But the council will never allow this creature to live. Run, before the palace becomes your grave." The veteran's heart pounded, his choices closing in like walls. Every instinct screamed to fight, to defend the king's honor. But the creature's small body trembled in his arms. He knew this was no battlefield he could win. Not here, not tonight. With one last look at the fallen king, he turned and ran. The dragon pressed close against his chest, whispering directions he did not understand. Left through the narrow door, down the old stairs, hurry. The veteran obeyed without question. Strangely, the creature seemed to know every hidden path of the palace, as if it had walked these halls before. Behind them, the sound of steel clashed and echoed. Shouts followed, boots pounding. The veteran's lungs burned, but he did not slow, not when the dragon's voice guided him, not when fear pushed at his back. Finally, they burst into the night. The city's cold air filled his chest. The streets were dark and empty, but he knew the hunt would soon spill out from the palace. He pulled his cloak tighter, hiding the glowing creature. For if anyone saw it, his death would be certain. As they moved through the alleys, the dragon spoke again. Its voice was soft now, like a child whispering secrets. "They fear me, but they do not understand me." The veteran glanced down, his brow heavy with doubt. "What are you?" he asked. The dragon tilted its small head. "I'm the last memory of an ancient race," it said. "I carry knowledge your kind has forgotten, and enemies your kind has never seen." The veteran frowned, his grip tightening. You speak like a king, yet you are but a child. The dragon's eyes glowed faintly. A child, yes, but with centuries inside me. They stopped in the shadows of a ruined archway. The veteran's chest heaved, his mind spinning with questions. Why him? Why now? Why did the dying king place this burden on a beggar soldier? The dragon seemed to read his thoughts. You think you are nothing, it said quietly, but you are chosen because you have already lost everything. Only those who know true loss can guard true hope. The words cut deep. The veteran looked away, ashamed. Once he had fought for honor, for glory, for a future. Now he fought only to survive. And yet, here was this creature, calling him protector, placing trust in him as if he were still the man he once had been. A sudden noise broke the moment. Boots striking stone, shouts echoing. The hunt was near. The veteran's jaw tightened. He pulled the dragon closer, whispering, "Then tell me your secret, little one. Why should I risk my life for you?" The dragon's golden eyes locked onto his, sharp and burning. "Because if I die, your world dies too," it said. Its words were simple, but the weight behind them was crushing. The veteran felt his blood turn cold. This was no child's fantasy, no trick of the night. This was truth. And as the sound of swords drew nearer, the poor veteran realized his oath was heavier than any armor. He was not only protecting a fragile creature, he was protecting a secret that could shatter kingdoms, a secret that could burn the stars themselves. The hunt begins. The night streets of Arvel twisted like a maze. Stone alleys, broken arches, and narrow bridges stretched before the poor veteran. Behind him came the echo of boots, the ringing of steel, the shouts of soldiers calling him traitor. Every shadow seemed alive, every torchlight a trap. The dragon pressed against his chest, its small body trembling. "They are close," it whispered, its golden eyes glowing faintly beneath the cloak. The veteran gritted his teeth, his legs burning as he pushed forward. He had run through battlefields, charged against armies, faced death 100 times. But this felt different. This was not war. It was a hunt. And he was the prey. A spear clattered against the wall near his head. The veteran ducked, pulling the dragon tighter. Soldiers were closing from both sides, their armor clashing in the dark. "There! He has the beast!" a voice roared. Fear rippled through the street. Doors slammed shut. Windows shuttered. The people of Arvel knew better than to get between the crown and its enemies. The veteran turned a sharp corner, stumbling into an old market square. Shattered stalls and broken carts filled the ground. Once a place of life, now only silence and ash remained. He gasped for breath, his chest heaving. "We cannot run forever," he muttered. The dragon's small voice answered calmly. "No, but you can survive tonight if you trust me." The veteran frowned, sweat dripping down his face. "You are a child. What can you do?" The dragon lifted its fragile head. "More than you think, less than you hope," it whispered. The sound of soldiers grew louder, their torches lighting the edges of the square. The veteran crouched low, his hands gripping a broken piece of wood as if it were a sword. His heart beat like a drum. He knew he could not fight them all. He knew if they saw the dragon, they would burn him alive in the square. Then the dragon moved, slipping from his arms to the ground. The veteran's eyes widened in panic. "No, stay hidden." But the small creature shook its head. Its scales glowed faintly, sparks dancing across its tiny wings. "I was born to be seen, not hidden," it said. The soldiers burst into the square, swords raised, shields clattering. They froze when they saw the glow. A gasp went through their ranks, fear twisting into fury. "Kill it," one shouted. Arrows hissed through the air. The veteran's body moved without thought. He shielded the dragon with his own body, wood splintering as an arrow struck near his arm. And then the impossible happened. The dragon opened its small mouth and released a sound. Not a roar, but a note. A single, pure note that cut through the night like glass. The air itself trembled, torches flickered, and the ground beneath their feet shook. The soldiers staggered, clutching their ears. From the cracks in the stone, thin lines of fire spread, glowing like veins of molten light. The veterans stared in disbelief. The childlike creature beside him was no weak pet. It was power, ancient and alive. The soldiers broke, some running in terror, others shouting prayers. But one officer, braver, or more foolish, stepped forward, sword raised high. He lunged for the dragon, and the veteran struck. With nothing but his broken piece of wood, he slammed the officer back. The old soldier inside him had awakened. "Enough!" the veteran roared, his voice shaking the square. "No one touches him." His words carried a weight he did not understand. For in that moment, he was no longer a beggar, no longer forgotten. He was protector, chosen not by crown or coin, but by fate. The dragon's glow dimmed, its body trembling with exhaustion. It stumbled, nearly falling. The veteran caught it, lifting it back into his arms. Its voice was weak now, a whisper against his chest. "Forgive me. I'm not strong yet. Every spark I use takes from my life. But without you, I would already be gone." The veteran's throat tightened. He looked at the burning cracks in the square, at the soldiers still retreating into the night. He realized then what the king had meant. The dragon was not a treasure. It was a burden, a weapon, a hope, and a curse. And now it was his. The night grew still again. The hunt slowed, but not ended. He knew more soldiers would come, stronger, relentless. He knew he had placed himself against an empire that no longer wanted him. But as he looked at the small creature sleeping weakly in his arms, he felt no fear. For the first time in years, he felt alive. The hunt had only begun, and so had his true war. Revelation of the stars. The city lay far behind, but the poor veteran did not rest. He carried the tiny dragon through the night, across broken roads and silent fields. Only when the first light of dawn touched the sky did he stop. They found shelter in the ruins of an old watchtower, its stones cracked and swallowed by moss. The veteran lowered himself against the wall, his body aching, his breath heavy. He looked down at the fragile creature in his arms. Its glow had faded, its breathing weak. For a moment, fear struck him. Had it burned out its life in the market square? Then the dragon's eyes opened, soft and golden. "I live," it whispered, its voice faint but steady. The veteran exhaled, a weight lifting from his chest. "You nearly killed yourself," he muttered. "What madness drove you to do that?" The dragon tilted its head. "If I had done nothing, you would be dead now." The veteran looked away, silence falling between them. His hands were scarred, his heart heavy. He had been ready to die many times before. But now, dying would mean leaving this small creature alone. And the thought felt unbearable. The dragon shifted, its gaze lifting to the pale sky. "Protector," it said softly, "I must tell you what I am. Otherwise, you will never understand why the king trusted me to you." The veteran's jaw tightened. He had asked himself this question 100 times since that night. Why him? Why not a noble knight, a general, a man with power? But he said nothing, only nodded for the creature to continue. The dragon's golden eyes grew brighter. "I am not from this kingdom," it began, "not from this world, not even from the soil beneath your feet." The veteran frowned. "Not of this world? Then where?" The dragon turned its gaze upward. "To the stars," it whispered, "to the endless dark above, where my kind once soared between suns and worlds. We were keepers of knowledge, guardians of fire and sky. But empires rose against us, fearing our wisdom. We were hunted, broken, scattered, until I was the last." The veteran's chest tightened as he listened. It sounded like madness, yet the dragon's voice carried a truth too heavy to deny. He remembered the visions in its eyes, the fire, the strange stars burning, the endless dark. They had not been dreams. They had been memories. "Why would they fear you?" the veteran asked. "You are small, fragile." The dragon's voice cut him like steel. "Because what is small today will not remain so tomorrow." Because even as a child, I carry knowledge that could burn kingdoms to ash. And because I know what comes for this world. The veteran leaned closer, his voice low. What comes? The dragon's eyes glowed brighter, as if lit from within. From its small body rose a faint shimmer, like smoke made of starlight. The veteran blinked, and suddenly he saw, not the ruined tower, not the dawn sky, but visions painted in fire and shadow. He saw great machines drifting in the void, armies of iron and flame, their ships blotting out the stars. He saw worlds burning, skies torn open by weapons no man could build. And through it all, he heard a single sound, the beating of wings. Not one pair, but thousands, echoing across the cosmos. And then silence, a silence that felt like death itself. The vision shattered, leaving him gasping, his heart racing. He looked at the dragon, whose body now shook with weakness. That is what waits, it whispered. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. The Empire thinks it rules the world, but they cannot even imagine what will fall from the stars. If I die, there will be no warning, no hope, no fire left to resist them. The veteran sat in silence, the weight of the vision crushing him. He had thought his world small, only wars, kings, and men. But now he saw how small even kings were, and how fragile his people were compared to the storm beyond the sky. Slowly, he reached out, placing his scarred hand against the dragon's trembling side. Then I will keep you alive, he said, his voice low but firm. The dragon blinked, surprised, even knowing what hunts us. Yes, the veteran said, his eyes hardening, because if your death means the death of the world, then my life is worth less than nothing if I fail. The dragon lowered its head, pressing against his hand. For the first time, its voice carried warmth, not command, not burden. Protector, it whispered again, but this time the word was not a title. It was trust. The veteran leaned back against the stone. The sun was rising, painting the ruins in light. He knew soldiers would come. He knew the hunt had not ended. But now he also knew something greater. He was not only running from an empire. He was running from a future written in fire. And somewhere in his scarred heart, he felt that perhaps, just perhaps, he was not running at all. He was walking toward his true war. A war not for kings, not for crowns, but for the stars themselves. Betrayal and sacrifice. The veteran and the dragon traveled for days, moving through forests, across rivers, and into the silent valleys where no soldier dared to follow. The Empire's shadow still hunted them, but for a time there was peace. The dragon grew stronger each day, though still small, still fragile. It whispered stories of the stars, of worlds lost, of knowledge buried in fire. And the veteran listened, his heart changing with every word. But peace never lasts. One evening, as the sun fell red behind the trees, the veteran heard a voice that made his heart pause. Old friend, from the shadows stepped a man dressed in dark leather, his beard streaked with gray, his eyes sharp and familiar. The veteran froze, memories flooding back. This was Kale, his comrade from the old wars, the man who had once fought at his side, a brother in arms. For a moment, the weight of the years vanished. Kale, the veteran whispered, his voice heavy with disbelief. Kale smiled, though his eyes did not. You're hard to find, brother. The whole kingdom whispers your name, calls you traitor. I knew they lied. I knew you would never betray the crown. The veteran felt something stir in his chest. Here was a face from the past, a man who had bled beside him. For the first time since the king's death, he felt a spark of hope. Then you know the truth, he said, his voice steady. I protect something greater than the crown, something the king himself trusted to me. Kale stepped closer, his boots crunching on the leaves. Show me, he said, his voice calm, too calm. The dragon stirred in the veteran's cloak, its golden eyes wary. The veteran hesitated, but old trust ran deep. He pulled the cloak aside, revealing the small creature. The dragon looked at Kale and whispered softly, "This one carries the scent of lies." The veteran's breath caught. But before he could speak, Kale's smile broke into something cold. His hand moved like lightning, drawing a blade. I knew it, Kale hissed. The king was mad to trust a beggar. That creature belongs to the council, to the empire, not to you. The betrayal cut deeper than any sword. The veteran stumbled back, his voice shaking. Kale, we fought together. We buried brothers together. How can you? Kale's eyes hardened. Because I remember what we fought for, and I will not let a monster destroy it. Stand aside, old friend. I'll make this quick. The dragon pressed against the veteran's chest, whispering, he will not stop. His heart belongs to fear. Kale lunged, steel flashing in the dying light. The veteran raised his arm, the blade cutting deep into his skin. Blood spilled, but he did not fall. He struck back with his fist, the soldier inside him roaring awake. The two men clashed in the clearing, old brothers now enemies. Every strike carried years of trust turned to ash. But Kale was younger, faster, and fueled by anger. The veteran stumbled, his strength fading. Kale raised his blade for the final blow. And then it happened. The dragon leapt from the veteran's arms, its tiny body glowing brighter than fire. A scream filled the clearing. Not human, not beast, but something beyond. Light exploded, searing, blinding. Kale staggered back, his sword dropping. Flames burst around him, wrapping him in a storm of fire. His scream echoed through the trees before silence fell. The light faded. The veteran blinked, his vision blurred. Kale lay still, the forest around him scorched, the air heavy with smoke and loss. The veteran turned, his chest twisting with dread. The dragon lay on the ground, its body dim, its breathing shallow. It had spent everything to save him. Its golden eyes flickered, weak but still burning. Protector, it whispered, its voice fragile. Do not cry for him. He chose his path. But you must not fail. Promise me you will not fail. The veteran knelt, tears burning in his eyes. His scarred hands lifted the small body, warm but fading. You gave too much, he whispered, his voice breaking. What? The dragon's eyes closed slowly. Because you gave everything long before me. It breathed, and then it fell silent. The veteran held it close, his heart torn open. Kale was gone, the dragon broken. The night around him felt heavier than war. He had lost his brother. He was close to losing the one thing that still held hope for the world. But as the wind swept through the trees, carrying the scent of ash and blood, the veteran lifted his head, his voice trembling but fierce. I will not fail, even if the world calls me traitor, even if I must walk this road alone. I will not fail you. In his arms, the dragon stirred faintly, its eyes glowing once more. Not strong, not safe, but alive. And in that fragile light, the veteran found strength. Strength to stand, strength to carry, strength to fight. The night had stolen his brother, but it had given him his true oath. An oath written not in crowns or banners, but in blood, fire, and sacrifice. The protector's oath. The forest was silent. Smoke drifted through the trees, carrying the bitter smell of ash and blood. Kale's body lay still among the scorched earth, a shadow of what had once been a brother. The veteran stood over him, his chest heavy, his arm bleeding, his heart torn. In his arms rested the dragon, its golden eyes faint, its body trembling. It had saved him, but at a cost. Every spark of power drained its small frame. Every breath now seemed like a battle. The veteran sank to his knees, his scarred hands holding the fragile creature close. Forgive me, he whispered, his voice breaking. I should have protected you, not the other way around. The dragon stirred weakly. Its voice came like a fading echo. You did. Protector. Without you, I would already be gone. The veteran closed his eyes, tears sliding down his scarred face. For years, he had believed himself forgotten, useless, a shadow. But in this small being's eyes, he had found trust. Trust worth more than any crown. The sky above darkened as clouds rolled across the stars. A storm was coming, both in the heavens and on the earth. The empire would not stop. The council would not rest until the dragon was gone. And beyond them, the vision of fire and machines, the war that stretched across the stars. That too was waiting. The veteran lifted his head, his voice low but unshaken. "Listen to me," he said, his word for the dragon, for himself, and for the silent world around him. "I swear before the dead, before the living, before the stars themselves, I will not fail you." The dragon's faint eyes opened wider, a fragile light glowing within them. "An oath," it whispered. "Yes," the veteran said, his voice strong now. "I will protect you, not because you carry knowledge, not because you are a weapon, but because you are hope. And hope is the one thing this world cannot lose." The dragon pressed its small head against his chest. A warmth spread through the veteran's body. Not fire, not light, but something deeper: bond, trust, destiny. The creature's voice grew firmer, though still weak. "Then our journey begins. Protector of the last star." The veteran stood, his back straight, his steps heavy but sure. He carried the dragon in his arms, leaving Kale's body behind. There was no time for graves. The Empire would come. The hunt would never stop. And yet, he did not walk in fear. For the first time since the war, he was no longer a forgotten soldier. He was not a beggar, not a shadow. He was chosen, not by kings, not by crowns, but by a dying oath and a fragile, glowing creature that carried the fire of the stars. As he walked into the dark forest, the storm broke. Rain fell heavy, washing the blood from his hands. Lightning lit the sky, and thunder rolled like drums of war. The veteran did not look back. He had no past left to return to, only a future waiting to be written. And somewhere beyond the storm, beyond the Empire's reach, beyond the world itself, the machines of the void stirred. The coming fire prepared to fall. But in the hands of a scarred, forgotten soldier, a new oath had been born, an oath strong enough to burn through darkness, an oath that might one day shake even the stars, the oath of the protector,